Let's look at how we can work around what are called two-dimensional arrays or 2D arrays. Well, like we talked about before, 2D, any array can have an initialization or can be uninitialized. But the difference between 1D array and 2D array is that a 1D array just has one row, while this 2D array has got rows and columns. So I'm going to start off with an 2D array that is uninitialized. So this is how you declare your 2D array. That is dim, and then you write the name of the array. I'm going to call it 2D array, like this, and then you write the size of the 2D array. These are the rows and the columns. So I'm going to write an array with 3 rows and 3 columns. So this is how we write it. That's 2, 2. Now you wonder why we're writing 2 rows and 2 columns when we are saying we need an array with 3 rows and 3 columns. Mind you, this is not the rows or the column. These are the sizes of the rows and the columns. So an array runs from 0. So this is going to run from 0, 1 and 2. That would be 3 rows, and this is going to run from 0, 1 and 2. That would be 3 columns. So you write it as 2. It's always minus n. That is the size of the array. And then you write as the data type. I'm going to write it as integer, like this. And then we now need to accept data from the user. So this is how we do it. We use a for loop, that is for I. Now this for I is going to start off accepting data for the rows. That is for I is equals to 0 to 2. Now, since we have a row and a column, I have just declared a for loop for a row, and now I need to declare a for loop for a column. Now these will be nested loops because they're going to be functioning for the same rows and for the same columns. So I'm going to now declare my next for loop as for I, as for j, which is equals to 0 to 2. So when the row becomes 1, the column also moves to 1. When the row becomes 2, column also moves to 2 during the increment. So this is how we do it. When these 2 for loops run, we're going to be accepting data from the user. So we first ask the user to enter a number. So console.writeLine, and we ask the user enter a number, like this, and every number that we are going to be getting from the user, we're going to be saving it. So follow correctly. This is how we save these values. So this is how we do it. We write console.readLine. Sorry, we have to prefix that. And I'm just going to continue like this, console.readLine, but we need to prefix the array. So we're going to say 2D array for loops counters are going to be accepting values into row, that is I, and values into column, that is j. So we're saying everything that is going to become accepted from the keyboard from the console is going to be saved in I and j as rows and column, like this. So this is how we do it. And now we need to make sure that our for loops are closed. So the first for loop is opened here and it's closed here, and the second one is opened here and it's closed here. This is just for accepting values, and I'm just going to make a demarcation after the acceptance of values, that is console.writeLine. I'm just going to put a line after each and every input, like this. Now, after the loops run from 0 to 2, we now need to display our values. So I'm going to write another for loop again. That is for, I'm going to call it for x. Now, as long as you're working with 2D arrays, you'll be using two sets of loops that are nested for every procedure that you need to undertake. So I'm going to say for x is equals to 0 to 2, that would be outputting I, that would be outputting raw, sorry. And then the next for loop is going to output the column, so I'm going to call it for y, is also going to run from 0 to 2, like this. So this is how you then output. So when these loops run every time, it's going to display this information, console.writeLine. Console.writeLine. So the first thing that we need to do now, we just need to tell the user what will be happening. So we're going to be telling the user that for index that will be displayed, so we just write index, this is text, and then we put a semicolon, and then we're going to be writing, for instance, we're going to be having index 00, index 01, but we need to pick that automatically from our loops here. We don't need to type that. So the program will be picking as per our direction. So we say index, and I'm going to open a bracket like this, and then I put an end because I now need to put the variable x. So I'm going to say index x, and then I need to put a semicolon, but it's going to be text, so I need to make sure that I put an end, and then I put a semicolon, I mean it's a colon, sorry, and then I'm going to also display the value for y, so I then put another end, since I'm going to be displaying a variable, and then I put a y like this, okay, and then I need to close this opening bracket here, so I put it in quotes because it's going to appear as text, but make sure that you don't leave out the end, and then you put your quotes. So it's going to output the value for x like this, and the index for y like this. So it will be written, I'm going to just put it as a comment. So for instance, we're going to be just having like index 0.0. So basically that would be our output, but we are not done because we're only outputting the index, but we're not outputting the values that would have been entered by the user in each array. So then we go ahead and output everything that would be accepted in the array. So I'm going to put an end again to separate everything that I've done before, and then I'm going to say everything from 2D array is looped by the variables x and y. So we're going to be doing it like this, that is x comma y like this. Now you wonder why we didn't take the value I and j. Understand, I and j, x and y, they're just counters. But if we write I and j in this loop, since we haven't declared it inside here, inside this loop, it won't actually be referenced. But you don't have to worry because x will just take the values and increment them as I will do, and j will just do the same as y will do. So we need to actually include something because I need to make sure that there is a space between this text here and that is in quotes, and the values that are going to be outputted by this array here. So I'm just going to put in the space character. So we do it like this, just do it like this, you type space, and then you put the size of spacing you want. I'm just going to be wanting the size space 1, and then you just put an end here. So every time you are writing something that is a VB.NET command, you make sure that you separate it with an end sign. but everything that will be in quotes, it will be outputted as text. So this will be text, and this will be text, and this will be text. Now the last thing that we need to include before we run our code is what is called console.read key. This one will make sure that your screen doesn't just disappear after it displays information. So I'm going to type console.read key. This means that our program will only exit the screen after we click any key. So let's run this code and see. Okay, so I'm just going to enter any number. So as you can see, at index 0, 0, we have 4, and incrementing until we reach to index 2. So this is how it is. These will be our rows. We have rows 0, 1, and 2. These are 3 rows, and we have columns 0, 1, and 2. These are 3 columns again. So basically, we have done justice to our code, and when you do that, you can just exit and you're done. But then now we need to work on an initialized array where we don't just accept any values, but we're just going to initialize it. So I'm just going to remove all this code and start again like this. So I'm going to now, on my comment, I'll just write it initialized like this. So in the initialized array, we declare it the same, that is dim to the array. That's the name of my array again, dim to the array. So since we're going to be initializing it, we don't write the size, we just write a comma. Then we say as integer, that's the data type, and then we now initialize the array, that is equals, and then we initialize it with curly braces. Now the curly braces, these ones will be enclosing everything, and then we need to now write the initialization. So I'm just going to write an array that has got 5 and 2 columns. So I'm going to start off with the first row, and I'll be writing it like this. You put another set of curly braces inside, and then I'm just going to put the item for the row, that is 2, and for the column, that is 4, and then you separate it with a comma again. So this is the first row. Row will be having 2 and then 4 in the column. So we write 5 sets of these values anyhow you want. So I'm just going to put randomly 4 and 6, and I write another set, that is 5, 2, and another set, that is 7, 9. That is how many sets? 1, 2, 3, 4. We need the last one. That will be just 3 and let's say 8, like this. So this is how we initialize an array. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and we have how many columns? 1, 2 columns. So the same will be for the columns again. So now we need to make sure that we output everything on our console. So this is how we do it. We use for loops. So I'm going to write my for loops. For I is equals to 0 to 4. Now understand that this loop has got 5 rows and 2 columns. So the loop will be, the row will be running from let me just put as a comment, that would be 5 rows. So the row will be running from 0 to 4 to make it 5 rows, and then I put another for loop for the columns now. Now that is 0 for j is equals to 0 to, since it has got 2 columns, it's going to run from 0 to 1. That is 0 and 1. These are 2 columns. So I write 2 columns as my comments, like this. Okay, so you need to make sure that every for loop is enclosed if you are still an amateur. So this loop is opening here and closing here, and this one is opening here and closing here, and everything that is going to happen is going to be written within these nested for loops. So when these loops are running, we're going to be outputting on our console screen as console.writeLine like this. So let's just put some text. So my text will be telling me which index I'm at. So I'm just going to write index, and then I put a semicolon, and then I put an opening bracket. So I need it to put everything that will be at index I along with index j. Okay, so it's going to output everything first at, not everything as such, it's going to output the first element at index I, as well as the element at index j, like this. But I need to separate the indexes with a semicolon. So I'm just going to put some quotes here, and then like this. I'm going to put a colon, sorry, like this. So we need to make sure that there is an end before anything that is outside the quotations. And then now I need to close this bracket. I'm going to put an end, and then I put my quotes like this. Sorry, I'm going to put a closing bracket. So before we go any further, you need to understand we're going to be outputting the text index, and then we're going to be outputting I and j. So this is how it will appear on your screen. I'm going to put it as a comment again. That's index. So it will be looking like this. For instance, index is 0 and 0, like this. So everything that you're seeing in this seemingly reddish color, that would be everything that is going to be outputted on the screen like this. And then the I and j, they're going to be looping I and j relatively based on the number of rows and columns. So everything that is not going to be in, every time when you break a sequence of quotations, you put an end, and then your I, an end, and then your semicolon, your end, and then your j. Okay, but then it's just going to be outputting this text, but we need it to output also the values that would have been initialized here, which are these ones. So this is how we do it. We then write and again, but I need to put some spacing between the text and the value. So I'm just going to put okay, this is how I do it, space, and then I'm going to put a space of 1 character like this, and then I'm going to now output everything that is in my array, that is 2D array, like this, and it's going to output everything as per loop I and j. Okay, now if we leave this program like this, it won't really be sufficient, because it will output everything that will be in the first index I and j, and then just stops. But we need it to output everything that is displayed here. So this is how we do it. We increment I and j in their next text. But since you realize for j is closed here, so we increment j here instead of I. You might be confused. And then for I is closing here, so we increment it at the end like this. And of course, don't forget what we talked about. Every time when you write your code, don't leave out the console.read key. to make sure that your code doesn't just disappear after it is displayed. I mean, your output doesn't disappear after it is displayed on the screen, like this. And then we run it, and then we need to see if we have done justice to our code. So as you can see, at index 00, we have 2, and at index 01, we have 4, and at index 10, we had 4, just like how it is appearing in our initialized array. So when you do that, you have done justice to your array code.